harmonious elements in this system that I use is water and earth, and fire and air. And probably all of you know that already. But basically, if you look at water and earth together, they represent more private, deep, emotional, enduring, home and family oriented, less adventurous emotionally, more steadiness, and, well, at least in the case of earth, I would say that's true, endurance, patience. They like the stability of emotions and want to count on a partner being there for them. Now, if you're talking about fire and air signs, a lot of times they'll be a lot more energetic. Communication would be very important. They may want stimulus. They can be impulsive, might be highly reactive and sensitive, potentially more playful and social. Although that's not always the case, but that certainly would be a more likely possibility. And then a craving for excitement and fun, often crave adventure, are attracted to someone dynamic or outgoing, popular, talkative, exciting, perhaps unpredictable. So you can kind of see a difference between these two types. And so one of the fundamental things that I do with this particular system is I look at water and earth as being more compatible and fire and air being more compatible because they have similar natures, or it just, to me, it feels as though those are more compatible. All right, so if we look at relationship comparison factors, the things that I use primarily are going to be in the order that I've got them here. So the sun and the moon, and the sun is supported by or felt by the moon, and the moon is brightened and understood by the sun. So Carl Jung also proved, and Robert mentioned that I studied Carl Jung, and that's how I got into astrology. And one of the things that got me into astrology is when I read his article where he had statistically proven that having the sun and moon in a couple's chart in good condition, in other words, if they're either in opposition or conjunct one another in the chart of the two couples, then that bodes for successful marriages. And he proved it statistically. So that totally turned me on to astrology. That's why I'm here. So then the next thing that I look at is the sun and Venus, which is very strong as well in terms of the attraction to the other partner. And it can go either way, but I would say that the person with the sun is going to be the person that is attracted to the Venus. But it can work both ways. So I wouldn't say that's hard and fast. That's just typical. And so Venus is usually very attracted to the sun person and sees the best in them. And then with Venus and Mars, that's also very strong, especially for physical attraction, passion. They have complementary tastes. Often they like to eat the same foods. They're more likely to have good timing, which is related to their Marses. And so if you have Mars, that's also good timing. And then in terms of their moods and wanting to do the same types of things, or wanting to eat the same things, having the same desires at the same point in time. I mean, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but if you have a Mars square Mars with somebody, for example, it often is a situation where you feel like doing one thing and they feel like doing something else. And so that can be difficult in a relationship. Whereas if you have a compatible Mars or a Venus-Mars, it tends to make that a little easier. And then with the moon and Venus, I found that the moon nurtures the other emotionally, and the Venus feels really appreciated by that. Other primary factors to consider. Certainly the ascendant and descendant are really important, and I find those very often in couples charts. Because if you think about it, the ascendant is what you're here to do in this lifetime, or kind of how you present yourself in this lifetime, your persona. And then if you're looking at your descendant, which is the 7th house, 7th house cusp, I should say, then that's where you're looking for a person that you would find as a partner. So if they, for example, have something that symbolizes their sign, it could be, let's say you have Sagittarius rising, and the person in the opposite house has, in your opposite house would be Gemini. And if you find somebody who has Gemini rising, or who has a Gemini sun, or many planets in Gemini, or just Jupiter, in Gemini, or something like that, or if you have Jupiter in that house, let's say, then a lot of times that will be an indicator that that person is sort of what you're expecting in a partner. And this is sometimes not even fully conscious. Sometimes you'll just automatically meet somebody who has one of those indicators in that 7th house, and they just feel like a partner to you. And then other things too, the moon is really important. Having some sort of empathic and emotional compatibility is pretty important. If you, say, have an Aries moon and your partner doesn't have a moon in fire or air, it might be difficult for them to understand if they're, say, a water sign. So that's where the elemental compatibility really comes into play. I think it's super important to be able to emote with a compatible element.